Hello and welcome. So today we're going to talk about how you build a questionnaire that actually works. We're moving way beyond just jotting down a few questions and hoping for the best. We're going to dive into the real scientific process that gets you results you can actually trust. Let's jump in. Okay, we've all been there, haven't we? You're staring at a survey and the questions just make no sense. Or they're impossible to answer honestly, or they feel completely random. You find yourself just clicking through, totally frustrated, knowing that whoever gets these answers is getting pure junk. It's such a waste of everybody's time. And that right there is the heart of the problem. In research, there's this old saying, garbage in, garbage out. It's so true. If you ask poorly designed questions, you're going to get unusable, totally misleading answers. And the stakes are really high here. We're talking failed projects, wasted money, and coming to completely wrong conclusions. So how do we fix this? Well, we have to start thinking differently. A professional questionnaire isn't just a list of questions someone dreamed up over a cup of coffee. No, it's a precisely engineered instrument. And building one really comes down to two major phases. First, you craft the blueprint, and then you put that blueprint through a serious stress test. Let's dig into phase one, the blueprint. Think about it. You wouldn't build a house without a detailed architectural plan, right? Same thing here. You just can't build a quality questionnaire on a whim. This is your design stage, where every single detail gets meticulously mapped out before a single final question is even written. So this blueprint phase has 4 key steps. First, you've got to set really clear aims. Second, you define the attributes. We'll get to what that means in a sec. Third, you write out a full plan. And finally, number 4, you actually develop and write the items, the questions. Let's break down the really important ones. Step 1 is all about purpose. It's about asking the big questions before you start. What are we actually trying to measure here? Who exactly are we asking? And a big one, why does this thing even need to exist? Is there a real gap in what we already know? Answering these questions stops you from just reinventing the wheel. Now, here's a really key idea, the attribute. It's just a technical term for the very specific thing you're trying to measure. It could be anything, really. Customer satisfaction, student stress, team morale. You have to define your attributes clearly. It's how you turn a kind of fuzzy idea into a concrete target you can actually aim for. So here's a great example. Let's say you want to measure student stress. That's way too broad. You need to break it down into these specific attributes. Things like academic stressors, exams and deadlines, or social stressors, problems with friends or family, or even intrapersonal stressors, that internal stuff like self-doubt. This clarity is what makes sure you're asking the right questions to cover all the important angles. Okay, so the next 2 steps are where the blueprint really starts to come to life. You're planning the questionnaires flow, figuring out how long it should take, and writing super clear instructions for people. And then comes the real art, writing the questions themselves. They need to be short, crystal clear, and totally free of any bias. All right, once that blueprint is done and you have a draft, it's time for phase 2, the stress test. This is my favorite part. It's where you take your beautifully designed plan and see if it can actually survive in the real world. Does it fall apart the second a real person starts using it? Let's find out. This phase has 3 main steps. First, and this is the big one, you select and validate your items. This is really the heart of the whole stress test. After that, you standardize the scores so they're easy to interpret. And finally, you do one last round of prep before it's ready to go live. Now that validation step isn't just one thing. It's more like a gauntlet you have to run through. First, you get experts in the field to review every single question. Then you sit down with actual users and do what are called cognitive interviews to see if they understand the questions the way you meant them to. Then you do a small pilot study. And finally, you run a bunch of statistics to check its integrity. And believe me, this process is tough. For example, during that expert review, they rate each question on its relevance and clarity, and those readings get crunched into a score. A question has to score at least a 0.80 on this index to even be considered. Anything less gets a major rewrite, or it's just thrown out completely. So, after all the human feedback, the numbers take over. That psychometric evaluation uses fancy statistical tests to make sure that all the questions for, say, academic stressors actually stick together and measure that one thing. It's kind of like making sure every question on a math test is actually about math and not history. This is how you prove your questionnaire is reliable. The final steps are all about making it usable. You create a super clear scoring system so anyone can understand what the results mean. And after one last check of everything, the layout, the instructions, the scoring, your scientifically validated tool is finally ready to go. So, after that whole 7-step journey from just an idea to a fully validated instrument, why does all this matter? Why go through all the trouble? Because honestly, following this kind of rigorous process is the only way to make sure the data you collect is high quality and trustworthy. And this really sums it up perfectly. On one side, you have your everyday survey. Just a list of questions that usually leads to confusing, unreliable results. But on the other side, you have a validated questionnaire. It's a scientifically engineered tool specifically built to give you data you can actually stand behind. At the end of the day, it all boils down to this one idea. The source material says it perfectly. Making sure your questionnaire is valid is absolutely critical. It's the foundation of any good survey research. Without it, you might as well be collecting random noise. So the next time you need to gather some info, you'll know the huge difference between just asking a few questions and truly measuring something. And that leaves us with one final thought. Now that you know what goes into doing it right, what is it in your work, in your studies, or just in your life that you'll try to measure a little more carefully?